This playoffs is pretty much off to the predictable start you could expect. You got the Nuggets are currently up 2-0 on the Lakers, and they are in the midst of Game 3, which, as of my last check, the Lakers are currently winning. This is the Lakers' first game on home court. They're at halftime right now. It is 53-47, and if the Lakers can't protect home court tonight, then they're toast. I mean, they're toast anyways, but this could be a sweep if the Lakers lose tonight. If they win here, I think it's going to be a 5-game series. I don't see the Lakers taking both games at home. If they do, I'll be pleasantly surprised, but highly unlikely. The Lakers blew a 20-point lead the other day in game 2, and it's just one of those things that is so demoralizing that any sort of momentum that they could have had, it just nips it right in the bud. Because if the Lakers were able to leave Denver with a split series, that's a completely different ball game. I mean, having 2 games at home, like, I'm not saying they would have been the favorites, but there would have been a reality where the Lakers could have won that series. But they choked a 20-point lead. That in and of itself is demoralizing, much less the fact that you could have flipped a game at home. Now you have to go protect home court. And like I said, I think the Lakers will probably win tonight, but they're going to lose game 4, and that'll be a wrap. LeBron made some headlines after the game because he was cussing out the replay center with some pretty strong language, dropping F-bombs and the like, just because he said they missed some fairly obvious fouls at the end of the game that he thinks could have made the difference. And he also pointed out that there was some really big faults, like bad calls made during the Knicks 76ers game that the NBA actually came out and announced that they got the calls wrong. Now, I don't really know why they do that. I mean, transparency is good, and them going out and admitting that the referees made a mistake, I suppose, lends them some moral high ground points, but I don't really see, it doesn't change the fact that the call was made. It's not like if the game is decided because of a bad call, the win is voided or they get to replay the last 2 minutes of the game. Like, it changes nothing. It's just the league pretty much telling the fans and the players of whatever team got their hopes crushed by a poor call that, like, yeah, you have good reason to be upset because we whiffed that one. And I feel like that just kind of makes it hurt worse at the end of the day. But for whatever reason, they have a policy of doing that. And so they admitted they pretty much hosed the Sixers after this last game. And the Sixers were able to bounce back and win game 3 tonight. And now the series is 2-1. So just before I go in depth on these series, and we're just doing NBA playoffs tonight, the Celtics and the Heat, the series is currently tied 1-1. Heat beat the Pelicans or beat the Bulls in the play-in game, so they won the 8th seed spot. Jimmy Butler is hurt, so he's out of the series. Should be an easy one for the Celtics, but they found a way to blow game 2, and we'll see how game 3 impacts things. The Knicks and Sixers, like I just said, the Sixers won game 3 tonight, so it's now a 2-1 series. The Bucks and the Pacers is 1-1 at the moment. And Giannis will not be there. So it's up to Dame to try to carry this Bucks team. Cavs and Maverick, that's a 2-1 series, and I don't care about that series. You shouldn't care about that series unless you live in Cleveland or Orlando. So this is all we're going to talk about. I just think it's one of the most boring NBA. I haven't watched a single game of it, but just the Cavs versus the Magic. Neither one of those teams is going to be an NBA champion. So neither one of those teams has really an interesting franchise at the moment, ever really. The Magic haven't been interesting since Dwight Howard left, and that's over 10 years ago at this point. The Cavs without LeBron are a bottom feeder team historically, and now, I mean, sure they got Donovan Mitchell, but is he really a superstar in the league at this point? So it is what it is. It's going to happen. Whoever wins is going to get put out in round two, unless somehow the Pacers can upset the Bucks. Then we'll get to see some mediocre teams scrape by to the Western Conference Finals, only to get put out by the Knicks or the Celtics. You know what? If the Knicks can somehow, let me first just look at the bracket just to see if this is even possible. So, okay, the Cavaliers and Magic series, the winner of that will play the Celtics or the Heat. Most likely the Celtics. So, yeah. No, I was going to say if the winner of that plays the Pacers, who plays, and that team would play the Knicks, and there's a world where the Knicks could finesse an NBA Finals appearance somehow, but that's not likely. The Knicks, I mean, the Knicks could sweep by to the conference finals if Damian Lillard and the Bucks don't get their act together and Giannis doesn't come back in time or isn't fully recovered. But anyways, on to the Western Conference. The Thunder are up 2-0. That's going to be a wash of a series. Nuggets and Lakers, we already touched on that one. The Timberwolves and the Suns, the Timberwolves are up 2-0. And the Clippers and Mavericks series is tied 1-1. And that is the definition of an interesting 4-seed and 5-seed matchup right there. That is a middle-of-the-road playoff matchup that excites me because you've got a lot of star power in that series. You have two teams that could viably make a run for, be dark horse candidates for a finals appearance. Now, I'm not saying either one of these teams would be favorites, but there is a long shot chance that either one of them could do some damage here in the playoffs. And that's really the series I'm going to focus in on right now because Kawhi Leonard came back in game 2, and that's the game. So it's 1-1. Clippers won the first one. Kawhi coming back, I think, threw off the Clippers' chemistry a little bit, and the Mavs were able to pick up game 2. So in game 1, Kyrie had 31 points, 4 assists, and 7 rebounds. Luka had 33 points, 6 assists, and 13 rebounds. Harden on the Clippers had 28, 8, and 2. Paul George had 22, 3, and 6. And Russell Westbrook has become a bench player for the Clippers. And his role has gotten to be so diminished that I honestly debated not even taking the time to highlight his stats because they're 13, 4, and 4. They're pretty minimal, to be honest. Now, maybe there's a chance you could argue that he's having an impactful time as a spark plug coming off the bench, but it's just sad to see how far he's fallen from 8 years ago. He was the MVP. Now he's coming off the bench on a playoff team and hasn't even broke 15 points a game in the series. He went from triple doubles to a triple single in game 2 where he had 7 points, 3 assists, and 9 rebounds. Now, Kawhi, like I said, he came back from an injury for game 2, and he made his return by dropping 15, 2, and 7, which isn't a bad first game back from injury. Unfortunately for him, though, his first game back was in a playoff spot, and they blew it, and the series is now tied. I mean, when you have a player of Kawhi's caliber, I understand the thought process of you want to keep him, or you want to get him out on the floor as quickly as possible and start building your momentum. However, when you're thinking strategically in a playoff setting, it may have been wiser for the Clippers if they sat Kawhi for Game 2, banking on the fact that they would go up 2-0, and then they try to reincorporate Kawhi back into the lineup where they have more wiggle room. Now, they've still got a 1-1. It's not the end of the world. It's not like they got blown out by any means in the last game. So hopefully Kawhi can get in the groove and really make this a competitive series. Because the Mavs only beat the Clippers by 3 points. So it came down to the wire. Kyrie, he's clutch. Luka, you have the two clutchest players in the league at the moment on the same team, paired up against a team who is historically not known for coming out on top when the going gets hard. It made for an interesting dynamic, and this is the biggest toss-up series for me. I can see this going either way. Now, when it comes to the Suns, really the biggest takeaway from the Suns series so far is just how Kevin Durant has not been able to get anything going in his post-Warriors career. The Timberwolves, I think I read a stat somewhere. Or no, never mind. I think it's the Nuggets and the Lakers. The Nuggets have beat the Lakers 9 times this calendar year. And that's just a crazy stat. But anyways, Kevin Durant in the first game dropped 31, went 11 for 17, and had 7 rebounds, which is some solid stats. But in Game 2, I don't know how long it's been since Kevin Durant played a full-length NBA playoff game and got held to below 20 points. I can't imagine it's been any time in the recent future or in the recent past, but he got held to 18 in the last game on 6 of 15 for shooting. So KD shooting below 50% is something you don't see often, and it's just him and Devin Booker are all the Suns have got. And Bradley, KD's on a level up here. Book and Bradley Beal, they're stars, arguably not even stars at this moment. KD's the only superstar on the team, and NBA playoff basketball is more rough in your face than the regular season, and it's also a lot more concentrated defensively. So for the Timberwolves to hone in on Kevin Durant the way it seems they've been doing, it doesn't bode well for the Suns. Devin Booker and Bradley Beal have to pick up the slack, and it just doesn't seem like that's something they've been able to do so far. Now, the first game, the Timberwolves won 120-95. So the Suns were actually closer when KD got held to sub-20 than they were when he dropped 31. But like KD dropping 31, Devin Booker dropping 18, and Bradley Beal having 15, I just don't. I think Devin Booker has to have at least like 23 points or more every game, in addition to KD matching that, hopefully raising that for them to be competitive. It has to be a duo instead of KD and the crew. Because when you look over to what the Timberwolves are doing, Anthony Edwards dropped 33 in Game 1, and they have a much more team-oriented game. Karl Anthony Towns had 19. Rudy Gobert had 14. Some dude named Nickeil Walker had 18. Like, they're just getting a lot more people in on the action than the Suns are. And I think in playoff basketball, that's the important thing. Like, the Suns had 8 players score points in Game 1. The Timberwolves had 8, 9, 10, 11 players put points on the board. Now, some of them just had 2 or 5, but it's the totality that really brings it all together. And when you have Anthony Edwards dropping 33, and you've also got Jordan McLaughlin, who only played 3 minutes in the game, come in and be effective in those 3 minutes. He got 2 points and 1 rebound. Or Luka Garza had 3 minutes of play and he got 5 points and 1 rebound. Like, that's what's important, is those players come in and they might only get 3 minutes, but they make the most of it. Meanwhile, if you look at the Suns bench, they have Bol, who had 4 minutes of playing time, and Bol is like 7'4", and he only had 1 rebound in 4 minutes. You had Drew Eubanks, who came out. No, not even Drew Eubanks. Eric Gordon played 21 minutes for the Suns and had 0 points, 2 rebounds, and 1 assist. The Timberwolves bench players playing 3 minutes were more impactful than Eric Gordon on the Suns, who played 21. That kind of ISO ball that usually follows Kevin Durant teams, just because that's the kind of player that he is. He doesn't have much of a passing game. He's a spot-up shooter that has enough post moves to where he can take you down low a little bit. As tall as he is, it makes sense. But he's never been known being a great ball distributor. And the great team, 9 times out of 10, will always beat the team with the great player. And that has been the story of this game, of this series so far. That was just game 1. Game 2 was a little bit closer. It was 105-93. And the wealth was a lot more spread. Eric Gordon bounced back. He had 15. Devin Booker had 20. Bradley Beal 14. Nurkic had 10. KD had 18. Then if you look over at the Timberwolves side, they had 6 players score 10 points or more. If you look over at the Suns, they had 5. So, I mean, like I said, the Suns did a better job of distributing the scoring load, and they didn't win. They were a heck of a lot closer, and the Timberwolves didn't quite have as much power coming off the bench. They didn't have any of their bench players score at all. Everybody that scored on the Timberwolves played at least 10 minutes. So they kind of, I don't want to say they dropped the ball, they're bench players, but they did what they had to do. They came out with an 8-point victory. And that, I think, will be the interesting thing to watch for in Game 3, is just how much of a job the Suns are doing in sharing the ball and how the Timberwolves bench players perform. Now, the Bucks, the story of the Bucks is essentially the same as that of the Suns, in that their main player right now is a volume scorer in Dame Lillard. And Dame has been playing pretty well himself. He scored 35 in Game 1 and 34 in Game 2. Shot 50% roughly from the field in both games. Had 50% from 3-ish too. 5 assists, though, and 3 assists in the first and second games, respectively. And that, to me, has always been my biggest knock against Damian Lillard. I think Dame is a really good player. I think that he's one of the best point guards in the league, but unfortunately, he is the quintessential modern point guard. He's more of a shooting guard now in the Bucks, but historically, he's been a point guard. Yet, he's not a great ball distributor. Patrick Beverley is the main ball distributor on the Bucks. He had 8 assists, which is perfectly fine for a point guard to have. But I just think when Giannis is out and you don't have the star duo that you do when he's in the game, you have to have somebody that can pick up the slack. I mean, it's what I was just saying with the Timberwolves. If your star's out and you can't win the game just by overwhelming force, you really have to focus on making sure you're playing a good team game. And a lot of times it's on that star player to be the onus of sharing the wealth and getting the ball in the hands of those role players who, if you can get them going, they really make the difference in the game. Now, just looking at the numbers, the Bucks had a pretty good job sharing the assist load. Chris Middleton had 6, Dame had 5, Patrick Beverly had 2. Everybody just kind of did their thing, which is good, but also indicates to me that there's not one person from where which the offense is flowing. And when nobody is in control of the mode of the game, that can be a problem. Like, it's good that everybody's sharing the wealth around, but it is always, I think, crucial that one person is really leading the charge and setting the tempo of the game. Otherwise, it's on the other team to set that tempo, and that's what the Pacers did in Game 2. They completely wiped the floor with the Bucks, 125 to 108. Tyrese Halliburton had 12 and 12. I mean, they had 3 different players score over 20 points. Pascal Siakam had 37. I remember when he was back on the Raptors, people were saying he had next. And if he can pull the Pacers over the Bucks in this, his time might have arrived. I mean, really though, the Bucks and the Pacers, the story of this series has just been field goal percentage. Because in Game 1, the Bucks shot over 50%, and the Pacers were like mid-40s, and the Pacers lost. Game 2, the Bucks were 44%, the Pacers were 55%. So they've been both pretty streaky teams. The Bucks more so just because without Giannis and their star, they don't really have an identity at the moment. So that makes sense as to why they're streaky. They've also had a lot harder time defending the paint. The Pacers had 52 points in the paint compared to 36 on the Bucks. Giannis was always the Bucks' best in paint defender, and if he can come back, I think they'll definitely tighten up the paint a little bit. Not even a little bit, they tighten it up a lot, and it would cut away of some of those easy points that the Pacers have been getting in there and really level the playing field. Unfortunately for the Bucks too, Chris Middleton went down in Game 2, and he's questionable for Game 3. If that happens, we might see a very big upset take place in the Eastern Conference. Now, Doc Rivers says Giannis is close to being back for the series. What that means actually is anybody's guess. He could just be saying that in order to get the Pacers fearing Giannis coming back and try to throw them off their game psychologically, or he could actually just be close to coming back. You never know with these coaches and their injury reports around playoff time. But if Giannis is going to be out for a while, and Chris Middleton's also out, and it's up to Damian Lillard to carry this team, I see the Pacers managing to upset the Bucks in the first round. But that's pretty much all of the interesting playoff matchups that are going on at the moment. We'll be sure to touch up on the rest of the first round next week. I'm sure there will be at least one series that goes to Game 7, and we'll still be going on by that point. But until that time, I will see y'all later.